Well, hey guys, welcome back to the channel. It's been quite a while since I had part one of how to install a turntable on the channel. So here is part two, and we just kind of wrap it up because part one was supposed to be multi-parts so you guys could digest it better. Part one ended up being way too simple, way too short. So I figured let's just wrap up that series in a two-part video, this being the second part on how to install the Walthers turntable. So we're going to do that with the newest turntable, obviously. We'll get that installed, kind of wrapped up some major points. But be sure to check out my original video way back when I was a lot skinnier and a lot younger, on the turntable install for any parts or pieces missing, because with videos this far apart, I may have missed some important features of installing the turntable that you may need, and you can get that in the first video. And the other thing about the first video is you can also get how to install the turntable without the hole already cut, because this hole is already cut in bench work, so we had to do it a little differently for measurements. And the first one we did the entire hole, cut out and everything, so you can check that out. The only thing that's really changed over all these years is the controller and some of the features of the turntable, and there's no more weathering pattern in the turntable with a 130 footer or any of that. So with that said, let's get started on part two of how to install a 130 foot HO scale Walthers turntable right now. Now, when I decided to do this video and a little bit of a series, I had already been in some aspect of first stages of completion on this project. The hole was drilled really when I established the layout and set it up. So what I did was covered the area in cork, and you can get either Midwest cork, but that's getting hard to find, so you can look for 3/16 inch thick cork sheets or rolls online. Amazon.com is where I got several 3/16 inch thick cork sheets, and you can see the difference between that Midwest cork, which is darker, and that lighter cork over there. So I've just covered the area, cut out areas, and then for areas the cork didn't line up perfectly, I've used spackling joint compound from Ace Hardware to fill in those gaps, wait for them to dry, and then the area is ready to paint. Now we can see that the turntable is already dropped in. I've been testing some stuff. The bridge actually drops in to the center, but if we lift this up out for a second, it's got a really tight fit, which is good because you don't want it going anywhere. You can see the connections. Lost the little doghouse deal, but see the connections. On the right side is your track wire. You're going to want to color code. And on the left, two terminal blocks is a power source. I've used just a regular plug-in power source that I've spliced that fit the requirements listed, and we'll go over that. Then the bottom there, it looks like a phone cable. That is actually a phone cable, and that plugs up to the controller. So pretty simple wiring there. I'll drop this back down for a second. So this is Walthers turntable 933-2859 is the item number. Still readily available. That's what you're looking at that we just looked at. On the left, you're going to have control power, 12 to 18 volts of AC or 16 to 24 of DC. Do not use a power pack like a variable MTH power pack. They want a fixed power pack. So I just found a wall plug that met those requirements and went with the AC, so it was 16 volts AC. The milliamps is a minimum. Above does not hurt, so mine is 16 AC plus 1000 milliamps. And then that wire we talked about that was a telephone wire just goes to the control box, and that is how you control the turntable. So we talked in the last series that we were using this big template here, and it says 2 to 3/8 should be the turntable edge to the roundhouse edge, but you also have to add distance on the turntable lip because the rail needs to go to the edge of that lip without interfering with the bridge track. So I've measured that out using a ruler that has 8ths and 16ths, so I don't have to do much math, and I came up with just shy of 3 inches. There is where that track is going to have to extend. So now I can measure these tracks and extend them out so that they're able to be installed in the roundhouse. Alright, what I'm doing here is measuring and making templates for the stall tracks that are going to go in the roundhouse. So your 6-stall roundhouse from Walthers has 2 longer bays and 4 shorter bays. So I've measured the length of these bays, and I also measured the length of the distance between the roundhouse and the edge of the turntable and the turntable lip, because this track is going to have to extend past the turntable lip. Once all those measurements are made and added up, you have your track length. Then you have to mark which ties are coming off, because every tie from the roundhouse back has to be removed, and every tie from this point forward about ½ an inch has to be removed for the lip. So now I'm going to remove the ties with a pair of pliers, and that will leave 2 rails. We'll tape it down and make sure, verify that it fits, and do that for every stall. After 1 test fit for each length of stall, putting it on the turntable, verifying, coming back, doing the rest of them, and then placing the turntable down temporarily so we can line up the turntable and make sure it lines up for locomotives and rolling stock to basically go from the turntable to the roundhouse smoothly. Also, whatever edge you cut, try to flip it around, because the other edge, if it's not cut, will be a lot smoother of a transition for the locomotives and rolling stock from the turntable to the roundhouse. If you have already cut it, or you don't have that ability, you just file the corners and make a little V shape on each end of the rail to help guide that in, and be sure to file the bottom as well if there's any burrs there. Now what you're down to after removing most of the ties is rail that's pretty flimsy. You've only got a little section there, but you do have room to work in case your measurements were slightly off. You can kind of shorten the track in the back if needed. But what we're going to do now is slide this rail in here, and we're not going to glue it yet. We're going to tape it down to test fit everything. Doesn't want to really play ball anyway as it is, because it's so weak. But there you have how that'll sit in there, and then we'll tape that in. Alright, as you can see here, the test fits have succeeded. They are in line at the very edge with the turntable, and you may need 1 more tie removed, because you do have to put in basically a feeder, but you don't want to use a rail joiner. You just want to solder a feeder wire to the bottom of the track so that it's not very visible. And the best place to do that is right at the entry of the door, where it's not very visible. So 1 more tie may have to come off for each one, but this gives you a template for both the long and the short. If you trust your measurements, you can just fire away and put them all in. But now I have a template to go ahead and cut the other remaining 3 short stalls and the other remaining 1 long stall, to go ahead and install those, and then test fit 1 more time, and then I can remove the 1 tie and start soldering each one of the feeders into the tracks. Alright, what I did so far is install the tracks that I cut, and I've taped them down in position after making sure the turntable lined up with them correctly. As you can see, they're moved back a little bit. I made an outline of the roundhouse, so I know exactly where to set it. I'm going to pull it off, and then we're going to pull these tracks one by one and cut 1 more tie off, drill any pre-drilled holes out so that we can nail down that track so it's nice and flush with the turntable, and I've taped this in position and marked the Sharpie, taken a Sharpie and marked each track on the edge so that we know where to position each track. I'm going to pull one, replace it, glue it down, and continue the pattern until we're done. I know some of you may find it funny that I'm doing this on a bunch of auto racks, but I've run out of space on my layout. So I'm using some Gorilla glue, clear Gorilla Glue. This stuff has not caused any problems with plastics before. Putting just a teeny bit on a skewer, and we're going to put that down in a few areas in this track. You don't want to run it on the whole track because I'm going to be able to get that up later if you want to reposition it somewhere else on the layout, move, etc. So we're going to put this glue in a few spots on this track, and then we'll slide the track back in. We'll actually set it back in because you don't want to accumulate the glue on the back. So we'll just dabble this, especially on the front as needed. And if you do see any glue residue on the top of that track, you're going to want to get that off. So we'll put this back in. There was not a pre-drilled hole, but we made one, 2 ties back. And we also have to cut 1 tie off the back for the feeder. And before you want to glue this down, you want to solder in those feeders. Okay, we're going to be soldering the track. The way my layout is, green is the right, yellow is the left. But obviously got to flip it, so green's going to go on this far side here. And trick I learned, was told by my cousin actually, was you actually put the soldering iron on the rail and then let the rail heat up to the point that it melts the solder. You have to be careful as well. I've marked on this side these areas that are indicating the edge of the roundhouse, so I don't want to go past that or you'll have a little bump. So you want to get close to this area as possible here. Get that scraped off there. Move it more towards this way. Okay, got some solder piled up here. Let's go ahead and connect. For wiring the roundhouse, we just soldered wires to the bottom of each rail, and because of the structure under the table, we had to go closer to the edge of the roundhouse, so that is where each wire is connected to the rail, and then we will plug that up into our main line wiring below. Make sure you color code just like you would with your layout so you don't get confused on which side is which. Alright, so as I mentioned, the roundhouse stall tracks are installed. I've also, to the left here, installed the lead-in tracks. It's 3 separate lead-in tracks. 2 going to the yard, actually all 3 they could go to the yard, 1 headed towards the main lines there. And the main thing with these tracks you want to make sure is that you have a flat surface, a good transition. We have a little bit of a problem here, so we're going to have to kind of file off the top of the rail a little bit because the lip is just not sitting right. You can also shave off the bottom of the track ties if the track ties are too high, depending on the manufacturer of track. For example, this is Atlas track on the lead-in, but obviously Walthers makes the turntable, so the turntable is going to have Walthers track on it, and there is a slight height difference there. So once that's done, obviously the wiring, you're going to want to keep your left and right separate, and left and right under the turntable as well. All that feeds into your main lines or a district, whatever you want to do with that. You can watch other videos here on the website or on YouTube for how to wire up the layout, and it works the same way with the turntable, and I showed you some of the differences that are involved. Now, stall tracks are going to be a little more difficult because you don't have those pre-molded areas to lay the rails in like you do on the roundhouse. There's a couple ways of doing it. You can either manually move the turntable bridge around, or you can take a protractor like this that has extended arms. Make sure you're sitting at exactly 90 degrees on the turntable pit, and you're going to want to mark 10 degrees on each stall track with a pin. So you can do that by either on either just the right rail of each one or just the left rail of each one. Make a mark with a straight edge so you know where that's going to go. Or again, you can have that bridge in and you can install the bridge and take a straight edge and pre-position each area. But you're going to want 10 degrees of separation, and that way you have your stall tracks marked. At that point, you can drop feeder wires, nail them in place, etc. Let's briefly talk about maintenance of this turntable. Now that we have the roundhouse and all the stall tracks installed, just the underside, you can see you don't want stuff getting into those gears, so you want to keep a vacuum. I got a little mini vacuum I bought called the Duck that keeps that all nice and clear. And we're also going to talk briefly about tapering each rail, which I have yet to do, so I'm going to show you in the manual here. You want to angle in on each rail. It helps transition those locomotives from the turntable to the stall tracks. For wiring, you want to make sure that you have the left rail and the right rail all the way around separated, and that I kind of showed you initially on the install. So it's left rail all the way around, and once you get to the opposite end there, that left rail will end up on the opposite side, because, well, it's just opposite. So this left rail compared to that left rail is going to be in opposite sides, as you can see there. So the turntable has protections built in for that, but once you install it, you can program the program tracks, and you can run that through into the stall tracks and make sure there's no short or any other issue as well. So all of your stall tracks are installed, they're wired. As I showed you, you can solder those wires to the bottom of the rail or somewhere inconspicuous on all these stall tracks. In the back, towards the backdrop, I have it wired at the very back because I'm going to put a Hayes bumper in front of each one, which will cover any wiring that's showing, even though you probably can't see much wiring. It actually worked out pretty well. But so all the wiring is done. Now we can talk about programming the turntable. So this is the newer version, and it is different. So you have the track button on the bottom, CW, which is clockwise, and CCW, counterclockwise. And if you just want to manually do it, you do short little presses. But say you want track, and say you've already programmed it, so I can hit track 6 and then hit CW to move up to number 6, and then I hit track again, and it's going to automatically swing around to that correct track number. So we won't wait on it because it's going to go quite a ways. That track 6 is that last stall over there, but that's how you do it. Oh, it's that end. Okay, that works. I couldn't remember. I thought it was the other end. You can also program the head or tail end of it, and you see head or tail there. So one thing about programming, so say you want to program, you hit track until it's flashing, and then you hit track until it flashes really fast wherever you're positioned, and then you pick the number you want. So that's track 6 is what I want, and then I want head or tail, so I hold whichever one I want there, and that will program in the track. So that's as simple as that is. You can do lots of different things with these different programs. Be sure to check out Walthers.com, and the turntable has the manual online. So you go to the product and you can see the manual, download it to see if you want to check with all the different things you can do. You can clear memory, you can change the display brightness of this. all sorts of things. And there's 2 screw mounts here to mount it on the fascia, but right now I've just got it sitting in one of my NCE control little brackets for now. So that is how you program the turntable, and basically after you've got all the wiring done and you can run through and test everything, make sure power, make sure there's no interruptions, make sure rail height is correct. The trick about rail height is if it's a little high, you can shave down the ties. You can shave down the rail itself if you need to, but that's going to subject it to some dirt and grime and such. But Walthers tracks does tend to sit a little low on this turntable, so you may have to adjust that. One trick I also use is I nail down the first tie really hard, and that will just pin that rail to that edge. You also want the turntable obviously completely flush and down as far as it can be. There's screws that you can install on the underside to cinch it down as well. Alright, testing each one of the stall tracks for kind of smoothness and making sure nothing derails, making sure nothing shorts. And once it's off, just switch directions. So got the ACE Pro Cab right there. So we're doing this with all the stall tracks just to make sure everything's good to go before basically I start doing scenery, some ballasting, finishing up reassembling the roundhouse. So this is just how I'm going to go about it here. And we'll check each one of these. And so that's tonight. Tomorrow, scenery back here and all around. I've got some rock cliffs that we'll figure out how to incorporate. And then ballasting and then backdrop. So it'll be pretty quick. All this backing for the scenery is coming off. It's actually really strong. Surprised me how strong it was because I was worried about it chipping or flaking off, but it's pretty strong. That's going to be good. I think we'll look pretty decent here. Alright, well, I hope that helped you. If you're thinking about purchasing the 130-foot Walthers turntable, this newest version, still available pretty much everywhere. Produced enough that there's a not significant shortage to my knowledge. So brick and mortar retailers, online hobby shops, or Walthers.com sometimes has good pricing direct as well. So you can purchase that there if you wish. With that said, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on the channel. Take care.